review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a neurodivergent and, of course, non traditional leadership consultant, no other than Mr. Aaron Helton.
Hello, it's great to be here today. Thank you for having me on here, Daniel.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Aaron. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. As you've said, I am a neurodivergent and non traditional leadership coach. What I do is I work with specifically multiracial, other neurodiverse, or otherwise underrepresented leaders that want to tackle their people pleasing, anxiety, lack of boundaries, and help them to find their authenticity, help to set those boundaries, help to reduce that people pleasing. So I work with both those individual leaders and their businesses as a whole to create more authentic living.
Certainly, Mr. Aaron Hilton. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. So let's talk about leadership mindset and qualities. What are the most essential qualities of a great leader?
Mm. I would say one of the most important qualities of a great leader are vulnerability, first and foremost. You have to be able to own your story. And second, I would say self awareness, honestly, the entire spectrum of emotional intelligence, which self awareness is a part of. So I would say ultimately those are the two major aspects, and they fit the umbrella that kind of fits everything else under it. If you're self aware enough and have the emotional intelligence to be able to know what you've been through and how that affects the way that you see the world and are able to effectively communicate that with others, then also being vulnerable in sharing your story, such as I myself, one of my greatest strengths is my neurodivergence, even though it is about 50% of the time one of my greatest struggles as well. Being able to openly be myself helps me to walk the path that I then get to guide others down as a leadership consultant and executive coach.
So, Mr. Aaron, how does emotional intelligence contribute to effective leadership?
Mhm. Well, four of the cores of emotional intelligence, the four cores of it, is self awareness, self management, social awareness, and relationship management. In leadership, in and of itself, first off, as I mentioned, that self awareness piece. If you don't know that there's a problem, and not to say that it is inherently a problem, but if there's a quirk or an extreme that you have, let's say that you tackle problems by bulldozing straight towards them. If you have that as a core quality, well, what we say is any strength taken to an extreme becomes a weakness. So there are going to be moments where bulldozing straight to a solution are an incredible tool. There are going to be other situations where it may be detrimental. So having the self-awareness to understand, okay, what is the tool that I need within myself that's not the same tool I've used over and over. That's that self-awareness piece. Second is that self-management, being able to manage your reaction to things. How are you responding based on how emotions come through? And then, of course, the second half of those four cores, the social awareness and relationship management, have to deal with being able to see these things in others, which a lot of managers are good at, but not always. A good manager is not always a good leader. And so that's that relationship side of things where you're able to notice things in others, coach them, mentor them, or otherwise be able to sit in a business term VUCA, which is VUCA, and it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And so when you're able to more and more sit in the complexity of a situation, that shows an increased capacity of emotional intelligence, not just for yourself, but for others. And so that's why it's an important tool for leadership.
Very well said, Mr. Aaron. Beautifully articulated. So, what role does self awareness play in becoming a great leader?
Mm. Well, as mentioned, self awareness is about owning your story and being able to communicate it. I am a very anxious person, a people pleaser. That's why I help individuals that tend to deal with those specific problems. Because let me tell you, Growing up as an autistic individual in and of itself already had a lot of social issues with it, but I was also homeschooled. I was homeschooled by, what was called a tiger mom. In some cases, it's that Asian stereotype of a mother who says like, "Oh, you can't have dinner until you finish a piano ballad or something." And while it wasn't quite that extreme, our grading system, being homeschooled from kindergarten until I left for college, was A, B, F. And so anything less than 80% was considered a failure. So my mother always said, do it right the first time, and you'll get rid of all this headache, of having to do it again and do it again. And so when it came to social interactions, not only was the autism getting in the way of the right answer, but also the nature of being a human being. And so I became quite a people pleaser that was also a perfectionist. And it got so bad, I'll actually tell a quick story. I've never been in a bar fight, but there was actually a situation in which somebody had confused me for somebody else. And they said, "Hey," and I turned around and they punched me right in the stomach. And you know what my response was? "Ow, are you okay?" That was my response. It's like, "I'm sorry I got blood on your knife," right? And so that level of people pleasing, I tell that story because that's an aspect of who I am still, but it's not to that degree because I built the self awareness around where are the boundaries I need to set. If somebody punches me in public again, I'm going to turn around and say, "Why did you do that?" Maybe other people would say, "Yeah, just deck them back." And it's like, well, that's not who I am. But at the same time, I'm moving more and more towards the person I want to be because my self awareness allows me to say, "This is where I'm at right now." And then I can set a goal towards who I want to be. And that's the journey of essentially coaching. And that's the journey I get to walk personally and help others along. So it's very rewarding.
Totally agree, Mr. Aaron. So, how can a leader develop resilience in the face of challenges?
Hmm. I think it would depend on the challenges personally. But one major thing that we focus on in our coaching is leaning into the discomfort. We focus on challenging belief systems, such as when you're a teenager and you're learning to find your independence and your autonomy, you say, "Well, I can't do that because mom won't allow me. Like, I can't, if you can't go driving without a person in the car, right, until you get a certain level of licensing." Well, it's similar to that. When you start to find your independence or you start to work that job at 16, 17, 18, and around that age range, when you start to build that independence, that is also building resilience because you're discovering more of yourself. You're comparing the person you are against these hurdles. And so the challenges themselves create resilience. But if you don't lean into the discomfort, whatever you're scared of right now, deep down, of, "Oh, I want to work a different job, but I'm scared of the instability of job searching or leaving my current job. Or I want to start a band, but people are going to laugh at me," or something like that. But if that's what's calling to you within your soul, that's how you build resilience. And so it's less of the tactical issues of, well, staffing and hiring, which are still big issues. And I help clients through those very often. However, many times it comes down to an issue of the soul of the company, the soul of you. What do you want? And so that's the question I'll ask is, if you want to build resilience towards a challenge, what is the challenge and what do you want? And that's where we could have a conversation all day long and figure out what you're wanting.
Certainly. So, let's talk about communication and influence. How can leaders improve their communication skills?
Mm. It's hand in hand, I think, with the self awareness. Everybody has a communication style. Some people are more extroverted, some people are more introverted, some people prefer a lot of one on one conversations, others want to speak to a whole crowd. What's your message? What's your intention? And so, another aspect that we very often fall into, a big pitfall in communication, is that we try and talk before we listen. So, anybody here, I would say practice your listening skills first and foremost. Practice asking questions second as well. There's actually a book I really enjoy. I know this is a book review podcast, and so one book I really enjoyed but was by Warren Berger, Berger, I believe. Warren Berger, and it's called A More Beautiful Question or The Book of Beautiful Questions. He has two, I believe. And that talks about crafting a question. The More Beautiful Question talks about forming the right question to ask yourself to move past different hurdles, align yourself with who you want to be, finding your values, things like that, forming a vision. And then the book of beautiful questions is a little more useful for me as a coach, but for anybody reading them, it's questions that are just incredibly curious and really prompt you to explore yourself. And so I know I went on a slight tangent there to bring it all the way back to communication. When you find out the things you want to say and you're not talking just to talk, communication gets a lot easier. And then there are specific situations like, oh, I don't want to speak in this meeting because I'm not confident. I've got imposter syndrome. And those are some of the things that I, as a coach, work with people on to say, okay, this is not a communication problem, it's a confidence problem. You know what you want to say. Absolutely, right there on the screen. A more beautiful question.
Yes, people highly recommended by Mr. Aaron, by Warren Berger. Oh, interesting book. Please do read it. So, Mr. Aaron, let's talk about decision making and problem solving. Or problem solving. How can leaders make a better decision under pressure?
Mm. Under pressure specifically, it comes to stress management. Remember when I mentioned that self awareness piece and then the second being self management? That's where we get into that aspect of how do you handle stress? Similar to the communication, who are you? First and foremost, who are you baseline? And then who are you when you communicate? And then who are you under stress? So it all comes back to who am I? And it's all about self discovery. That's the journey of living. That's the journey of being a human being is you get to rediscover yourself or pieces of yourself over and over constantly as you exist. And so to make a better decision under pressure comes down first to how do you handle pressure? If you are a person who shuts down when you have pressure, when pressure is put on you and you're stressed, let's start to work on that together. What's really happening there? Is it analysis paralysis? Is it fear of rejection if you say the wrong thing? Is it the pressure that you're putting on yourself of, I need to say something, anything, so I don't look like an idiot in this meeting? Well, what happens if you just sit back and listen? Well, somebody else usually gets to it before me. Okay. Isn't that working towards the major goal of the company, which is you're all in this meeting to talk about something? Does it matter if it's you saying it? Well, it does. And then we can explore, is that ego talking or is it passion? If you're in charge of this project and you want to be the one presenting, then okay, let's tackle that confidence of, you know, that fear of saying the wrong thing. Because if you're the expert and you're in charge of saying this, they all expect you to say something. So let's talk about that. What's getting in the way? And that's where we get to explore those pieces of yourself and say, okay, under pressure, I tend to shut down because I'm scared of blank, blank, blank. So we tackle the fear initially and we figure out what's actually the trigger there. Is it I'm scared that they're going to think I'm an idiot? Well, as long as you hold that fear within yourself, it's a self fulfilling prophecy. Now, if you are looking to make better decisions outside of stress, this actually goes hand in hand because if you have a vision of who you want to be outside of stressful situations and you start to practice putting yourself, again, leaning into discomfort, putting yourself in situations where you feel a little bit of nervousness, but it's a less, I guess I'll say, risky situation because a meeting inherently might not be risky, but we're using that example. So we'll say a less risky situation like practicing a speech or talking about some data or whatever it is you're going to present on, right? Using that same example, talk to some friends or family about it, get feedback on it, and start to build that confidence. So that's how we would kind of tackle that fear in small doses to build up your, we use the word again, resilience to that concept. And so, outside of the stressful situation, what decisions do you want to make in and of itself, which come back down to who do you want to be? So, you start at everything who are you and who do you want to be? And everything else branches from there. So, in making those decisions, I want to make this type of decision. I want to be a bold leader. And then the stressful situation comes up. You say, well, I want to be a bold leader, but I'm scared right now. And so, okay, so you won't be as bold in that situation. But what is a way that you can reduce that fear? So maybe you can try and be a little bolder in how you're delivering things. If you want to be a very energetic guy and under stress, you get really shrunken, for example. So that's the sequential way that we would handle that essentially through coaching.
Yes, people, be bold in everything. Very well said, Mr. Aaron. Very well said. So, what would be your advice for those people out there want to be effective leader?
Mhm. Get an accountability partner. Even if it is not me, if it is a mentor or a coach or somebody outside the organization, anything like that, some form of feedback. Because when you build the awareness and you have the psychological safety to practice, that's when you can start to grow continuously. And I would say, having that accountability partner, actually, there's studies that show when given a 1 year period, individuals that just state a goal that they have at the start and like commit to it, after a year, 16% reach that goal. If they have an accountability partner or somebody checking in on continual progress, that number grows to 86%. Get yourself somebody that can reflect back the growth and keep you accountable to your goals. That's one of the major things that I do as a coach is I think of it like personal training. You're the one lifting the weights, but I'm there to say you've got two more. You can push a little more. You promised me that you'd get 15 reps, you're at 13. You can do this. And that alone gives you a 70% more likelihood to reach your goals over a year.
Yes, and consistency, people.
Mhm.
Is the key to one of the ingredients. So thank you for your advice, Mr. Aaron. And what will be your short-term and long-term goals as a coach?
My short term is to connect with as many people as possible. You can find me on LinkedIn, hopefully through the description in this video or through the chat or some form. But you can also search for me, Aaron Helton, Aaron, and then Helton. Find me on LinkedIn and connect. I always love just chatting with people. And then also visit our site, integratedleader.com, which Daniel has kindly put up on the screen a couple times for you. But my short term is just to connect, grow, help as many people as possible. My long term is, I guess, a little bit of a short term. I'm actually a bit of a surprise, but I'm working on my third draft of my book, and I will be releasing the book hopefully this year. So I'm working on that, still in the early stages, so I can't really promise anything, but that is my goal as far as midterm, I suppose. Something of a short, long combination. But my long term is I want to grow this business, integrated leadership systems, as large as it can be, because I want it to be a worldwide organization that helps as many people as possible to find authenticity. And to one of our values is love. So I want to help others to feel seen, heard, respected, and loved because the world needs more of that. And as I help others down that path, they help others down that path. And then we just make the world a better place together. So that's my long-term goal.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Aaron, and looking forward for your debut book. So let's talk about team building and development. What are the best ways for leaders to develop and empower their teams?
Mm. I noticed that team building, a lot of times businesses will contact me and say, "Hey, can you come speak to this group of people?" I say, "Yeah, what is your goal?" And they say, "Well, we're trying to build the team, team building, like build trust, stuff like that." And I say, notice how I had that study earlier about the 16% to 86%. It's very similar with a one-off training. Like, what was the last training you went to 6 months ago? Any of you that are listening, what did you learn there? And you might take one or two pieces if they really stuck with you. But otherwise, it's not going to be very memorable. You need that consistency. And so, one of the things that we offer at ILS is the Leadership Institute, which is 9 months with coaching in between. We meet with leaders once a month for 6 hours, and we talk about one concept. We have leadership, communication, trust building, emotional intelligence, how to have an effective team. And so when it comes to creating that team building, I would say ditch the one off trainings, get you an organization that can give you frequency and can help hold your employees accountable to the goals that they have. Don't invest in the buzzwords of like team building, invest in the people so that they can feel confident bringing issues to each other and feeling a culture of respect and accountability. Lastly, when it comes to building trust within your teammates, it comes back to the vulnerability. Vulnerability, consistency, and just being as authentic and having integrity, being as authentic as you can, consistent in how you show up, and owning your story, being vulnerable, saying, even as a leader, we have this perception that we need to be perfect, but you don't. In fact, when you are vulnerable and say, guys, I don't know how we're going to handle this, but I'm on your side. Let's do this together. Shifting some of that weight to a team mentality helps to build the team because everybody has a sense of ownership as well when you tackle problems together. And of course, as with all things, there's a balance. Don't come to your employees with every single issue you have. But for big ones where everybody's feeling it, you can acknowledge things like that and say, guys, I'm scared too, but we're going to do this together because we're a team and we're strong.
Definitely. So, Mr. Aaron, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Mental Health 101, in its first season. People, first season with Mr. Jim Smith. And of course, this podcast is created to empower our mental health awareness. So please do listen, Mental Health 101, wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Aaron, how can leaders continue to grow and evolve in their leadership journey?
Figure out who you want to be, first and foremost. Figure out who you want to be. What do you want to grow up to be? If you're a 50, 60-year-old leader, who do you want to grow up to be? It doesn't matter. If you're 20, 30, 40, 50, who do you want to be? And as you grow, that vision, that long term goal may shift slightly. It's endless potential. But if you don't have a goal to work towards, an overreaching 15, 20, 50-year goal, then you're going to be stuck in a pattern of let me get to next year's review and get a 3% increase in my salary. Those are the issues that'll trap you. That's reactivity. That's not moving with intention. When you think of who you want to be overall, that's when you start to chase after discomfort. You say, I have to grow. Just like an example is me personally growing for sales right now, trying to talk to more people. Podcasting is something I didn't think about 3 years ago. And now I guest on them because speaking is a strength of mine, but it wasn't always. So when it comes down to leadership and how you want to grow, you have to decide that for yourself. Using that same example of personal training, some people train to run really fast. Some train to jump really high and be athletic. Others want to lift as much as possible. Those are three extremely different body types that you'll see as well. So when you think of what type of leader you want to be, understand that having that long-term goal also helps you to understand when you are saying, I want to be a power lifter leader, and you look over at the marathon runner and say, well, I can't run that fast. Well, accept that that's not the leader you want to be. It might be shiny in the moment, but otherwise you'll be trying all three and you won't do any of them effectively. And so focus on what type of leader you want to be. Who do you want to be? And if you need help figuring that out, you know where to find me.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Aaron Hilton, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge being a leader to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business?
Absolutely. Please contact me on LinkedIn. You can find me, Aaron Helton, or visit our site, integratedleader.com. We do offer coaching virtually and work all over the world, but we are based in Columbus, Ohio. So if you are interested in connecting, I'll give you the first connection call free. Just chat with me and see if you like how we work together, and we can talk about collaboration. But if you're ready to take the next step and be the leader that you want to be and grow your business in the way that you want to towards the authentic culture you want it to have, then come chat and see what we can make together and make the world a better place.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Aaron Hilton because if you support him, more and more empowering leaders to come. So, Mr. Aaron, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a fun time.
More to come, people. See you soon.